Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Good. Be seated, please. Shura. Excuse me. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Welcome to you all. Nice to have you here. We'll be starting chapter 6 in our study of the Bhagavad Gita today. Also, welcome to our many viewers who are watching online. We will begin, as always, with some recitation. Be sure to glance at the meaning and then repeat after me. Just the first few verses of chapter 6. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, Anashrita Karma Palam, Anashrita Karma Palam, Karyam Karma Karoti Yaha, Karyam Karma Karoti Yaha, Sasannyasi cha yogi cha, Sasannyasi cha yogi cha, Na niragnir na chakriyaha, Na niragnir na chakriyaha, Yam sannyasamiti prahur, Yam sannyasamiti prahur, Yogam tam vidhi pandava, Yogam tam vidhi pandava, Nahya sanyasta sankalpo, Nahya sanyasta sankalpo, Yogi bhavati kaschana, Yogi bhavati kaschana, Arurukshor munir yogam, Arurukshor munir yogam, Karma karanam uchyate, Karma karanam uchyate, Yoga rudhasya tasyaiva, Yoga rudhasya tasyaiva, Shama karanam uchyate, Shama karanam uchyate, Yada hinendriyarteshu, Yada hinendriyarteshu, Na karma Na karma swanushajyate, Na karma swanushajyate, Sarva sankalpa sannyasi, Sarva sankalpa Yogarudhastaruchyate, Yogarudhastaruchyate, Uddharedatmanatmanam, Uddharedatmanatmanam, Natmanam avasarayet, Natmanam avasarayet, Atmaiva hyatmano bandhur, Atmaiva hyatmano bandhur, Atmaiva rapuratmanaha, Atmaiva rapuratmanaha, bandhuratmatmanasthasya, bandhuratmatmanasthasya yenatmaivatmana jataha yenaivatmana jataha anatmanastu shatrutve anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvata vartetatmaiva shatruvata jatatmanah prashantasya jatatmanah prashantasya paramatma samahitaha paramatma samahitaha shitoshna sukha dukkeshu shitoshna sukha dukkeshu tatamanapamanyoho tatamanapamanyoho. Very good. We will turn to the beginning of the chapter and begin our study of chapter 6, dhyana yoga. Dhyana is the most common word in Sanskrit for meditation. And the chapter is mostly dedicated to dhyana, the practice of meditation. And in fact, you get not dhyana in general, but you get Sri Krishna's personal technique. So there are, as most of you know, there are dozens and dozens of major meditation techniques. Sri Krishna teaches one technique in chapter 6. He teaches a technique that he feels is very effective, very important, and we will see in coming classes what that particular technique is. Which technique does Sri Krishna choose? But before we begin the study of meditation, the chapter actually opens with a rather lengthy passage which seems to be carried over from the prior chapter, from chapter 5. We just finished in our last class, chapter 5, Sannyasa Yoga, Sannyasa meaning renunciation. And in chapter 5, Sri Krishna gave, actually we studied it in quite some detail. We found 5 different meanings of sannyasa, or renunciation, 2 of which were suspiciously like karma yoga. And we won't return to all of that, but Sri Krishna was deliberately showing the similarity between sannyasa and karma yoga. That topic continues at the beginning of chapter 6. So it seems to be carried over. You might remember that at the end of chapter 5, we saw 2 verses on meditation. So you can see the fuzziness at the junction between chapter 5 and chapter 6. End of chapter 5, you see some verses on meditation. Beginning of chapter 6, you see some verses on sannyasa. We have to understand what's happening. Of course, that's the nature of the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata, 84,000 verses, is clearly not a highly structured manual on spiritual growth. In fact, more than anything else, the Mahabharata is a story. It's an epic. And most of the chapters in the Mahabharata are devoted to the story. The Bhagavad Gita, as you know very well, is 18 chapters excerpted from that huge Mahabharata, and excerpted because they are just filled with these wonderful spiritual teachings. So if we bear the context in mind, we can understand why there's this fuzziness between chapters. So, one more comment before we begin. The translation that you have up on the screen, by the way, you know that these translations are available on our website. Some students like to print them out and take notes. You can do that if you choose to. The translation we've been using, I did that translation about, I think, 12, 13 years ago. So it's quite a while ago. And when for the first 5 chapters, as I've been teaching it, you've noticed that from time to time, I would criticize the translation. Whose translation? My own. So with that in mind, I've started to revise those old translations. After 12 years, my translation skills have improved and language skills have improved. So what we're going to see going forward now are revised translations. I'll just point out one thing that's a little unique about these translations is that they are quarter by quarter translations. Mostly you'll see a prose translation in a paragraph following the Sanskrit. But many of you know some Sanskrit, or at least know some vocabulary, and I feel it's very helpful to put the translation as close as possible to the portion of the verse that it relates to. Of course, there are some difficulties with this. Sanskrit syntax and English syntax are quite different, so it's a little tricky to align the translation with the verses. Anyway, I do the best I can, and hopefully it has been and will continue to be helpful for you to keep you more connected to the text. And just a general comment, or observation, I should say, that seems to be one of the unique traits of the style of teaching. Of course, the style of teaching is what I learned from my guru, Puja Swami Tadatmananda, and he really emphasized going to the original text, and the original text is Sanskrit, and his point was by going to the original text, you gain a clarity of meaning that you will never get from a mere translation. So, as much as we can, you don't need to learn the Sanskrit language, it's rather a big project. But to the extent we can, in the style of teaching, the teacher tries the best possible to bring you closer to the Sanskrit language so that you can get that same clarity. I forget if it was in a book or a video I did, I once compared English translations to understanding the vision of the ancient rishis through English translations is like looking through frosted glass. If you can imagine, like on a shower stall or something, you have this frosted glass. You can see through frosted glass, but very indistinctly. And to me, that's what Sanskrit translations look like. You get the meaning, but you get it very indistinctly. Anyway, we'll be using this new translation. So with that introduction, let's begin our study of Chapter 6. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Anashrita Karma Palam, Anashrita Karyam Karma Karoti Yaha, Karyam Karma Karoti Yaha, Sasanyasi Cha Yogi Cha, Sasanyasi Cha Yogi Cha, Na Niragnir Na Chakriyaha, Na Niragnir Na Chakriyaha. Start in the second line, and Yaha, one who, karoti, one who does what? Karyam karma. Karma, you know. One who does karyam karma. Karyam is that which is to be done. Means karyam karma is your duty, following dharma. Karyam karma, in the simplest way, is your personal duty. So yaha karoti, one who does karyam karma, one who fulfills his or her duties. But now, you've heard me say this before. Merely fulfilling your duties is not karma yoga. Remember, we've had this discussion several times before. Why is the mere performance of your duties not karma yoga? And as we've discussed at great length, karma yoga is a matter of attitude. It's not what you do, it's the attitude with which you do it. So I joked with you before, if someone does all the duties, complaining constantly about how tedious it is, how much work it is, that's certainly not karma yoga. It's a matter of attitude. And that attitude is expressed in the first line. The one who performs all his or her duties, one who is anashritaha. Ashritaha means dependent. Anashritaha. Without dependence. Without dependence on what? Karma phalam. Without dependence on the fruits of the action, without being attached to the fruit of the action. One who does duties because duties are to be done, not because the person is trying to fulfill desires through those actions. So this is our main distinction between ordinary karma and karma yoga. Ordinary karma is driven by desire, raga and dvesha. Raga, the compulsion to get something you want. Dvesha, the compulsion to avoid something you don't want. Conventional karma is driven by raga, dvesha. Any action that's driven by desire or raga, dvesha is not karma yoga, obviously. Karma yoga, then, are actions not driven by desire, actions driven by, and we saw several different approaches to this, actions driven by a commitment to fulfill your duties, actions driven by a commitment to spiritual growth. We're starting to build up the whole vision of karma yoga. We're not going to get into it in detail here. But just to illustrate how different is the attitude of a karmi versus a karma yogi. The karmi does action for the sake of fulfilling desires. The karma yogi does action to fulfill one's duties, to pursue spiritual growth, to please Ishvara, to sacrifice, as a sacrifice to Ishvara. We've had all these discussions in the last few chapters. So, on the one who fulfills all his or her duties, anashritaha karma phalam, without attachment. So we're talking about a karma yogi. Now watch what Sri Krishna does here. He is a little play on words because he says this person is free from attachment. This person has renounced attachment, has renounced emotional dependency, has renounced raga and dvesha. One who renounces is a sannyasi. Sannyasa means renunciation. So Sri Krishna says in the third line, saha, that person, sannyasi cha yogi cha. That person is both a sannyasi and a yogi. That person is both a renouncer, sannyasi, having renounced raga, dvesha, and that person is a yogi, a karma yogi, a very good karma yogi. You'll see throughout the Bhagavad Gita that this is a little general comment, but I think an important one. Sometimes, not sometimes, most people have a tendency to think in terms of categories. Categories, things that you like and don't like are in categories, like foods that you like and you don't like are in different categories. People are in different categories. Oh, he's like this, she's like that. You realize that those categories are pretty arbitrary, and making those strict categories about people is especially harmful, because if you say she's like that, you're ignoring the full complexity of her personality. If you say he's like that, you're again oversimplifying the person. To categorize is to oversimplify. Life is complex, and divisions are blurry. As we just saw, the division between chapter 5 and chapter 6 is blurry. Just like everything in life, the division between A and B is blurry. So this strict categorization is a problem. And the reason I'm making a point about that is we bring this kind of divisive categorical thinking to spiritual life as well. And we think that there are different sadhanas which are separate and completely isolated from each other. We've had the discussion before about the intellectual people are in the box of jnana yoga. Emotional people are in the box, the category of bhakti yoga. Extroverted people are in the box, the category of karma yoga, etc. These categories are harmful because these sadhanas are not mutually exclusive. There's a lot of overlap, and that overlap is important. So here, Sri Krishna is very clearly showing that if you want to make this very clear distinction between a karma yogi and a sannyasi, a renouncer, he says that distinction is arbitrary, saying that the true karma yogi is also a renunciate, has renounced raga dvesha, therefore saha sannyasi yogi cha. That person is both simultaneously a sannyasi, a renouncer, and a yogi, a karma yogi. Na niragnihi, na cha akriyaha. It says the one who is not a sannyasi and yogi is one who, na niragnihi, one who is without a ritual fire, nacha akriyaha, one who doesn't do actions, specifically ritual actions. So both of these terms, niragni and akriya, refer to one who doesn't perform rituals. Now, many of you know that when you undergo a ritual of sannyasa, becoming a Hindu monk, that ritual excuses you from doing any other rituals. So in traditional Hindu culture, you're supposed to do certain rituals every day. Especially in ancient times, you had to do this Agnihotra ritual every morning and evening. The convention was that when you become a sannyasi, a Hindu monk, you are freed from the religious duty of performing those rituals. So here Sri Krishna is kind of making, he's being sarcastic. If I'll try to help you appreciate his sarcasm. Somebody who becomes a sannyasi, a Hindu monk, might be very proud of their status because now they have transcended all ritualism. Sri Krishna says they're not a sannyasi at all. By the mere renunciation of rituals, you're not truly a sannyasi because true sannyasa is not renouncing rituals. True sannyasa is renouncing raga and dvesha, renouncing desires, renouncing attachment. So Sri Krishna here is a little sarcastic. All those sannyasis who are proud of having renounced rituals, Sri Krishna says they're not sannyasis at all because they have yet to renounce raga and dvesha. Next. Yam sanyasamati prahur, yam samyasamati prahur, yogam tam vidhi pandava, yogam tam vidhi pandava, nahya sanyasta sankalpo, nahya sanyasta sankalpo, yogi bhavati kaschana, yogi bhavati kaschana. So Sri Krishna drives home that point. He says, yam sannyasam iti prahuhu, that which they call sannyasam, yam sannyasam, that which they call sannyasam, and they means the wise ones, the traditional ones. That which traditional scholars call sannyasa, Yogam tam vidhi Pandava. Pandava, O Arjuna, O son of Pandu, vidhi, please understand tam, that to be yoga, that which others consider sannyasa, that, O Arjuna, you should consider yoga. So here he is redefining sannyasa. He is saying sannyasa, this is sannyasa according to Sri Krishna. Our general idea of sannyasa is renouncing worldly life, going up into the Himalayas, living in a cave, and certainly renouncing your daily rituals. Renouncing your debts, renouncing your family, renouncing your responsibilities. To Sri Krishna, that is not true sannyasa. To Sri Krishna, true sannyasa is renouncing desire, renouncing raga dvesha, which is karma yoga. We discussed that before. And you might remember when we saw that five-fold division of sannyasa, 5 kinds of sannyasa. Remember, 2 of the 5 were aspects of karma yoga. We're not going to go back and revisit that. So here he's showing that a true sannyasi is a karma yogi. Someone who merely runs away from worldly life and lives in a cave is not truly a sannyasi according to Sri Krishna. Why? Nahi sannyasta sankalpaha yogi bhavati kaschana. Na kaschana, you have to connect those 2 words. No one. No one who is he, and you have to break the words apart. He asanyasta. No one who is asanyasta sankalpa. Here sankalpa means desire. It means other things in different contexts. Here it means desire. Sannyasta sankalpa is one who has renounced. Sannyasta is a participle from sannyasa, to renounce, having renounced. Sannyasta sankalpa is one who has renounced desires. But he says here, sannyasta sankalpa. One who has not renounced desires, nakaschana, no one who has yet to renounce all desires, yogi bhavati, can become a true karma yogi. So he's looking at it from both sides. There's no true sannyasi who is not also a karma yogi. There's no true karma yogi who's not also a sannyasi, which is a point he's making at the last line here. And what that means is, in order to be a karma yogi, you have to give up something. What do you have to give up to be a karma yogi? Well, not karma, obviously. By definition, you don't have to give up your job, you don't have to give up your family, you don't have to give up your worldly activities, but there is a kind of sannyasa, renunciation, involved in karma yoga, and that is giving up desire-based action. Any karma driven by raga and dvesha, the compulsion to get what you want, the compulsion to avoid what you don't want, those compulsive behaviors must be completely renounced. Only through that renunciation can you become a true karma yogi. So you can see how deliberately Sri Krishna here is blurring the lines between karma yoga and sannyasa. So bear in mind what we just discussed about the problem of categories. We like to put everything in nice, neat little categories. It's easy, but it doesn't lead to a proper, mature understanding. It's an oversimplification to put things in nice little boxes. So here Sri Krishna avoids that and deliberately blurs the line between sannyasa and yoga. Arurukshor yogam, arurukshor yogam, karma karanamuchyate, karma karanamuchyate, yoga rudhasya tasyaiva, yoga rudhasya tasyaiva, shama karanamuchyate, shama karanamuchyate. Ararukshoho munehe. The word muni has many meanings. Sometimes it's used for ancient sage. Munehe here is in a genitive, possessive case. The word is muni. And generally, muni we understand as a sage. Sometimes muni can be someone who practices mauna, silence. But here, muni is used in a more literal sense. One, the usual translation in commentaries will explain it as mananashilaha iti munihi. One who is given to thinking, one who appreciates deep thought. So a good trend, I guess a very literal translation of muni in this context then would be a thinking person, a thoughtful person, an intelligent person. An intelligent person is not one who puts everything in nice, neat little boxes. One who can appreciate the complexity of life and the complexity of spiritual practice. So munihi, for that munehi, for that thoughtful person, for that intelligent person, the intelligent person who is arurukshoho. For our Sanskrit students, it's a desiderative. Arurukshoho, for one who wants to ascend, one who wants to come up. One who wants to come up in what terms? Yogam. One who wants to translation here is good. So before I was criticizing my translations, now I can compliment my translations. Okay, one who wants to arurukshoho, for one who wants to advance in yoga. And yoga here in our current context is karma yoga. Sri Krishna can't let go of that topic, karma yoga. He began in chapter 2. Chapters 3, 4, and 5 were pretty much entirely karma yoga. And here at the beginning of chapter 6, he's still holding on to that topic. Do you think it's an important topic? That's why the Bhagavad Gita is what it is. There are so many scriptures one could study. But if you want to practice karma yoga, there is no scripture that can take the place of the Bhagavad Gita because of this emphasis on karma yoga. By the way, in chapter 18, in the final chapter, when Sri Krishna summarizes all these teachings, he comes back once again to karma yoga. We'll see that much later. Okay, so arurukshoho munehe yogam, for one who wants to ascend, for one who wants to gain spiritual growth. That's a better translation. For one who wants to gain spiritual growth through the practice of yoga, through the practice of karma yoga, for one who wants spiritual growth by practicing karma yoga, karma karanam uchyate. Uchyate, it is said that karma is the karanam, the cause. For one who wants to come up in spiritual life through the practice of karma yoga, karma karanam, karma is the means. Obviously, you cannot practice karma yoga sitting in a cave. You have to be engaged in worldly activities. In fact, not just worldly activities, you have to be engaged in activity. Teaching. I guess you can call teaching a worldly activity. I tend to think of it as a more spiritual activity, but it's an activity. So even this practice, even this act of teaching has to be performed with the attitude of karma yoga. So, for the performance of karma yoga, karma, action, is the means of spiritual growth, the sadhana, the spiritual practice. But now he makes a contrast. Yoga arudhasya tasya. So this is a contrast. Arurukshoho yogam. One who wants to come up through the practice of karma yoga is contrasted in the third line for yoga arudha. Arudha is one who has already come up. First two lines, the one who wants to progress, and the second two lines, the one who has already progressed. So the first half of the verse refers to one who wants to practice karma yoga. But by practicing karma yoga, you eventually accomplish your goal. What is this? This is a trick, not a trick question. It's an important question, but it's not easy to answer. What is the goal of karma yoga? This is like a test. You didn't think you were going to get a test on this today. This is a test. What is the goal of karma yoga? Now, if you say the goal is enlightenment, that's correct, but that's the remote goal. Obviously, karma yoga is meant to lead to enlightenment. What is the immediate goal of karma yoga? Some of you can answer that. If you've answered in your mind, the immediate goal of karma yoga is to break free from desire. The immediate goal of karma yoga is to overcome raga dvesha. If that's your answer, you get 100 points. That is the correct answer. But now watch. If you have practiced karma yoga properly, with dedication, and for a long enough period of time, then you've accomplished the goal, and that particular practice is no longer necessary. When you've accomplished, it's like, there's so many examples for this. So if you're using a hammer to pound in a nail, once the nail is pounded in, you don't carry the hammer with you all day long. The traditional story is once you cross the river in a boat, getting to the other side of the river, do you take the boat on your back and keep going? The boat has served its purpose. You leave it at the shore. For one who is yogarudhasya, for one who is advanced through the practice of karma yoga, for one who has broken free from raga dvesha through the practice of karma yoga, for that person, karma is no longer the means. Karma is like the boat. Karma is like the hammer. That practice of karma yoga, the performance of karma, has fulfilled its purpose. It's no longer necessary. You can leave the boat behind. You can leave the karma behind. And then if you leave the karma behind, then what do you take in its place? So yoga arudhasya tasya eva tasya, for that person who is yoga arudhasya, that person who has practiced karma yoga and who has overcome raga dvesha, then what is the karanam? What is the means for further spiritual practice, for further spiritual growth? What is the sadhana for that person? One who has concluded his or her sadhana, spiritual practice of karma yoga, what sadhana comes next? Shama karanam uchyate. Now that's a word that has a lot of meaning. Let's talk about it. Shama literally means quietude. That's the literal meaning of shama, quietude. Comes from the root sham. By the way, the same root from which shanti comes. Shama is a noun form, is a masculine noun. Shanti is a feminine noun. They come from the same root. They have kind of the same meaning. Shanti, being quiet, being peaceful. Shama, being quiet, being peaceful. Now, how to understand the word shama in this context, we can get two very different meanings out of it. So he's just said in the prior half, performance of karma is the means for the karma yogi. Then for one who is done performing karma yoga, then shama, quietude, means not performing karma, is one possible meaning. So shama is the opposite of karma. Karma means activity. Shama, absence of activity. Now that absence of activity means you've finished your practice of karma yoga, you've done enough, you've overcome raga dvesha. Now your focus should be more on, not on your daily activities, your focus should be more on turning your attention within. Your attention should be more on using the scriptures to further your process of inner exploration and inner spiritual growth. These are inward turned spiritual practices. Karma yoga is an outward turned spiritual practice, but most other spiritual practices are turned within. So shama can refer to all those spiritual practices in which you turn your attention within. And of course, we've just started chapter 6, dhyana yoga, meditation. So you can definitely get the meaning of meditation also from the word shama. So shama here means you're done performing karma, now shama. Now cease being so deeply engaged in those extrovert activities, turn your attention more within. Now, some of you are at a stage of life where you have too many responsibilities for that. Okay. Wait a few years so the children will go off to school, the children will get married, you will be able to retire. So that's what Vanaprastha is all about. Vanaprastha is a stage of life where you have the freedom to withdraw from that intense engagement in worldly activities so that you can begin to devote more attention to inner spiritual practice. So you get that in the meaning of shama, a gradual withdrawal from extrovert activities and turning your attention within, and very appropriate for the chapter on meditation, because dhyana, first and foremost, is turning your attention away from the world and turning your attention within. Okay, next. Yada hinendriyarteshu, yada hinendriyarteshu, na karma swanushajjate, na karma swanushajjate, sarva sankalpa sannyasi, sarva sankalpa sannyasi, yogarudhastarocyate, yogarudhastarocyate. So here, Sri Krishna wants to explain more about that yoga arudha. He used that word in the prior verse, yogarudhasya tasya, for that person who has completed his or her practice of karma yoga. So at the end of this line, yogarudhaha tada uchyate. Breaking the words apart. That person is yogarudha when, tada, then, when. And let's turn it into a bit of a question. When are you ready to stop practicing karma yoga? That's the question. And that's a good question. How much karma is enough? It's like, how many years should you work? How much money should you accumulate for your retirement fund? And all of these questions, big questions on some people's minds. So here the question is in a purely spiritual context, tada yogarudha. That person is yogarudha, complete in his or her practice of karma yoga when. And the first three lines, Sri Krishna says, when is it that karma yoga is complete? He says, yada, when. Now we got, in the first two lines, we have words scattered all over the place. Yada, and then in the second line, na anushajyate. You have to connect those separated words. Yada, when, na anushajyate, when one is not attached, when what is not attached to what? Karma. We have to break the words apart. Karma su is plural. When one is not, and karma su anu shajyate, breaking the words apart. When one is not attached, karma su, to actions, and in the first line, na indriyarteshu, nor are you attached to objects of the senses. When you are not attached to all the goodies in the world, which are indriya arthas, all the pleasant things that the world has to offer. So when you are no longer attached, and we use that word so casually, but please remember the essence of that meaning. What does it mean to not be attached to worldly pleasures? And to not be attached to worldly pleasures is to know that those worldly pleasures don't truly make you happy. The true source of happiness, as we've talked right from the beginning of this text, the true source of happiness is not outside in those little worldly pleasures. The true source of happiness lies within. So, yada, when, na indriyarteshu anushajyate, when you are no longer attached to worldly pleasures, when you are no longer driven to pursue worldly pleasures, knowing that the true source of contentment lies within, and na karmasu anushajyate, when you are no longer attached to karmasu, the connection is kind of obvious. In order to get those worldly pleasures, what do you have to do? You can't just sit there and wait for those worldly pleasures to come to you. Even if your spouse is willing to bring you a cup of tea, generally we have to work hard at getting the pleasures we seek in life. So if you are attached to worldly pleasures, you will also be attached to the means of getting those pleasures, which is karma. But here Sri Krishna says, remember the leading question, when has your practice of karma yoga proceeded sufficiently far? And Sri Krishna answers here, yada, when, na anushajyate, when you are free from attachment, when you're no longer driven to seek worldly pleasures or act upon your desires for worldly pleasures. How? Recognizing that the true source of contentment lies within. Such a person is sarva sankalpa sannyasi. He gives a one-word definition for the person who is mature in the practice of karma yoga. By the way, one word means one compound word. Words in Sanskrit can be compounded together, but when you compound words together, they form a new single word. So this is one word, sarva sankalpa sannyasi. So here's that sannyasa again. We're still stuck in chapter 5, sannyasa yoga, but again, the meaning of sannyasa, not in terms of renouncing the world, sannyasa in terms of renouncing raga dvesha, renouncing desire. That's exactly what this word means. Sarva sankalpa. Sankalpa we saw before has different meanings. Here it means desire. Sarva sankalpa, all desires. Sannyasi, one who has renounced all desires. So, when is your practice of karma yoga complete? You can answer that very simply now, when you have overcome the compulsive force of raga dvesha, when you no longer feel compelled to chase after what you want, when you no longer feel compelled to run away from what you don't want, then you are yoga arudha, you are matured through the practice of karma yoga. Next two verses, we get some nice poetry here. Uddharet atmanatmanam, uddharet atmanatmanam, natmanam avasadayet, natmanam avasadayet, atmaiva hyatmano bandhur, atmaiva hyatmano bandhur, atmaiva ripuratmanaha, atmaiva ripuratmana. How many times can you use the word atma in one verse? He sets a record, as if he's trying to set a record. But it's used in a poetic sense. And we've had this discussion before. Please note that the word atma does not always mean true self. Of course, in the context of Advaita Vedanta, we frequently use the word Atma to refer to true self. Sat Chit Ananda Atma. But if you look up Atma in a dictionary, that will not be the first meaning. Because the primary meaning of Atma, as grammarians call it, a reflexive pronoun. Reflexive pronoun means a pronoun that is reflexive refers to yourself, a pronoun that refers to you, oneself. And the primary meaning of Atma is indeed oneself. Not just, when you see the word self and capitalized often, and then that self starts to look like an external entity. There is no self that is external. The word self refers to you. Atma doesn't refer to something other than you. By the way, one of the worst mistakes a teacher can make is use the expression the Atma. The Atma. To put that article, the, in front of Atma turns it into something. Atma is not something. You would say, arek cheese. Arek cheese nahi. It's not just some other thing. Atma is you. So the word self, or the word Atma, refers to you in every sense. And we've actually seen in the Bhagavad Gita where the word Atma means mind. Not anyone's mind, your mind. The word Atma can refer, depending on the context, the word Atma can refer to your body. The word Atma can refer to your mind. The word Atma can refer to your sukshma sharira, the subtle body that travels, because it's all me, mine. And of course, the word Atma can refer to consciousness, the essence of who you are. Here in this verse, Atma simply means oneself, in a general sense, as a reflexive pronoun. Okay, so now with that in mind, by the way, that elaborate explanation of the word Atma was necessary. Otherwise, this verse won't make any sense at all. It sounds like blabber, using the word Atma again and again and again and again. It won't make sense. So what is he saying here? Uddharet Atmana Atmanam. Uddharet Atmanam. You should, Atmanam, oneself, Uddharet. You should lift up. You should raise. Atmanam uddharet. You should lift up yourself. How? Atmana. By yourself. You should raise yourself by yourself. Obviously, you cannot use the word Satchidananda, you can't use the meaning Satchidananda Atma in this context. It just means yourself in a most general sense. Uddharet Atmana Atmanam, you should raise yourself up by yourself. Na Atmanam avasadayet, na avasadayet, you should not let it sink down. What should you not let sink down? Atmanam, yourself. You should raise yourself by yourself. You should not let yourself sink down. Now, it's poetry. Remember, this is poetry, right? So this is a poetic expression of a life of spiritual practice, sadhana. So you should raise yourself up by yourself. You should not let yourself sink down. There are two important points here. First of all, whose responsibility is it to gain spiritual growth? Is it up to your guru? Is it up to any guru? Is it up to scripture? Is it up to your spouse giving you enough opportunity to engage in spiritual practice? You get the point. It's in your hands. It's up to you. It's your responsibility. This idea of guru as savior has kind of rubbed, this is just a personal opinion, you don't have to agree with me, but it looks to me like the idea of guru as savior has rubbed off on Hinduism from Christianity. In Christianity, there's so much emphasis on the savior. Guru is not your savior. Guru is teacher. Guru is one who leads you on a lifelong journey of spiritual growth. Guru is a mentor. Guru is important. Please don't misunderstand. I'm not suggesting that gurus are not important. Gurus are not savior in a Christian sense of it. And there's a little problem in some Hindu circles where it's said, if you place all your faith in the guru will take care of you. That's virtually a paraphrase of Christian theology, right? If you place all your faith in Jesus, Jesus will save you. So if you flip that over and apply it to guru, you've actually superimposed Christian thinking on Hindu tradition. Anyway, that's my opinion. So here, the point is that the guru will not lift you up. You have to do the work. The guru will lead you. The guru will guide you consistently, mentor you, lead you step by step. You have to do the work. It's an inner work which you are doing with the guidance of the guru. So therefore, uddharet atmana atmanam, you have to raise yourself by yourself. Na atmanam avasadhayet, don't let yourself sink down. And now we can be a little bit more specific. Don't let yourself sink down into what? You should raise yourself out of what? And not let yourself sink down into what? In our present context, we're talking about raga dvesha. You should raise yourself out of the compulsivity of raga dvesha. You should not let yourself fall back into having your life be directed by raga dvesha. You've heard me joke about this before. No one likes having a boss you around all day long. Do this, don't do that. But inside your mind, you've got two bosses, Mr. Raga and Mr. Dvesha. And they're Mr. because they both happen to be masculine nouns. So Mr. Raga says, do this. Mr. Dvesha says, don't do it. These are bosses inside your mind. And in a couple of verses, actually, we'll talk more about that in the next verse. So these two, you should Raise yourself up means to free yourself from being bossed around by raga dvesha. Not let yourself sink down means don't fall back into being driven by desire. And third line, Atma eva hi atmana bandhuhu. Atma eva, the self alone, is the bandhuhu. Here, bandhu meaning friend. It can mean relative to other things. Here it means friend. Bandhuhu. Hi atmanaha, one's own friend. Atma is your friend. Again, Atma means self. Oneself is your friend. Atmanaha, oneself. Bandhuhu is a friend, Atmanaha, for oneself. And Atma eva, and oneself indeed, is ripuhu, enemy, Atmanaha, for yourself. It's virtually the same as there's an English expression, you are your own best friend and you are your own worst enemy. That's exactly what it says. Atma eva hi atmana bandhuhu. You are your own best friend. Atma eva ripuhu atmanaha. And you are your own worst enemy. It's said here very clearly. That's a perfect translation, and how true it is. It's up to us to make wise decisions in life and to choose courses of action which lead to growth and to avoid actions which drag us down. And so often, raga dvesha, just to make it very clear, raga dvesha is not merely having two bosses in your head, but two bosses whose goal, mine, this is a little strong. Two bosses in your head whose goal is to destroy you. Uses the word ripu, enemy. Two of them. Two enemies, raga and dvesha. And why, sometimes people will say, why is desire so bad? After all, it's natural. Well, the fact is that desire is what draws people into all adharmic behavior, all harmful behavior. Every mistake you have made, I shouldn't say every, most mistakes we make are made because of desire. Desire clouds our judgment and leads us to choose actions we wouldn't otherwise choose. Deludes our judgment, and I've made this comment before. In American English, we have this expression, just this once. Very telling expression. You say that to you, by the way, you don't say it out loud, you say it to yourself, just this once. And when do you say that? When you're about to do something wrong, right? You're about to do something you know is wrong, and your intellect, instead of preventing you from doing something wrong, your intellect has been confused. I've used the word before. Your intellect has been hijacked by these two bosses, raga, dvesha. Your intellect gets hijacked by raga, dvesha, and you are compelled to do something that's wrong, even though you know it's wrong. What is that? What is that? Last line. Well, I lost my place here. Atma eva ripuhu atmanaha. You are your own worst enemy. When those bosses of raga dvesha hijacked your intellect which is supposed to keep you on the path of dharma, but having been hijacked by raga dvesha, your intellect actually makes up an excuse for you to do something that you know is wrong. This is why you can be your own worst enemy. And the same thought is further explained in the next verse. Bandhuratmatmanasthasya bandhuratmatmanasthasya yenatmaivatmana jitah yenatmaivatmana jitah anatmanastu shatrutve anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvata vartetatmaiva shatruvata. Start in the second line. Yena, by one, yena atma, you have to connect all these words. Yena atmana, by one person, by oneself. By oneself who is jitaha, conquered. Atma jitaha. Oh, we have all these atmas again. Yena atmana, atma jitaha. Atma jitaha. Oneself is conquered. Atma jitaha. Oneself is conquered by whom? Yena atmana. By oneself. For one, and I'll give you a better translation, for one whose self has been conquered by oneself. Now this word jitta is very significant here because it means that you have handled those two bosses in your mind. You have they're like two kings, and you have dethroned them. King Raga and King Dvesha. These two bosses, these two kings, you have dethroned them, you have fired them. That's good. If you can fire the boss, you have removed Raga, Dvesha from being in control of your behavior. That's what it means to be jitta, to have conquered. Atma jittaha. To conquer yourself means to free yourself from the compulsivity of raga, dvesha. For such a person who has conquered oneself, for the person who has kicked out the two bosses of raga, dvesha, for such a person, in the first line, bandhuhu atma atmanaha tasya. Tasya atmanaha. For that person, Atma bandhuhu, same as we saw in the last time. Atma is a friend, oneself is a friend. I'll paraphrase. When you have removed the two bosses of raga, dvesha, then you are a friend to yourself. And a friend to yourself means you do things which are healthy, which are uplifting, which lead to spiritual growth, and which avoid dragging you down, as we saw before. The contrary is also true. If you have conquered yourself, if you have removed Mr. Raga and Dvesha, then you are a friend to yourself, and the opposite is true. If you have not conquered raga, dvesha, then what? Anatmanaha, and it's used here kind of loosely to refer to one anatmanaha, ajitaha, for one who has not conquered oneself. Here we're speaking about a kind of, well, let me just see the verse before I get stuck in my comments. Anatmanaha two, but on the other hand, anatmanaha, for one who has not conquered oneself, for one who is still bossed around by raga and dvesha, for that person, atma varteta, atma, oneself, and this is the second line, varteta, would be shatrutve, engaged in harmful deeds, engaged in inimical deeds, shatrutve, engaged in inimical deeds Shatruvat, like an enemy. If you have not conquered yourself, if you have not overcome the compulsions of raga dvesha, then you become an enemy to yourself for the reasons we've just said. This is a matter of inner maturity, and that idea of maturity becomes very clear when you compare it to the lack of maturity in a child. Children are very impulsive, right? They don't have self-control. Do you have perfect self-control? Children are said to be immature because they lack self-control. What about adults? Are adults perfect in self-control? Not if Mr. Raga and Mr. Dvesha are still in charge. That's the point. Only when you become free from the compulsivity of Raga Dvesha, only then are you truly self-controlled. Only then are you mature. To become mature doesn't mean simply to grow up. How many people that you know many people who are advanced in years, but inside they're still like children. You know people like that. So merely to grow from say 5 years of age to 25 or 35 or 45 or 55 or 65, just to grow in years doesn't necessarily make you more mature. What makes you more mature is when you conquer this raga dvesha. Then you have, this is our next topic, by the way, then you have what my guru loved this expression, inner freedom. When we meet next week, this will be our new topic. Inner freedom is the result of not being bossed around by raga dvesha. Inner freedom means the freedom to act in ways which are healthy, which are helpful and healthy to you and to others. Inner freedom allows you to pursue spiritual growth. This is our next topic, and I think we will conclude here, and we'll see that in our next class. A quick announcement, tomorrow Sunday we have our satsanga question-answer session at 6 p.m. Come and join us. If you like, you can send me an email with your questions, or you can ask questions in the session. We'll conclude with our brief prayers. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Avamahe Kavingaveenam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspataha Nashranvan Utabasira Saranam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramhanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhaveta Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om.